So I'm here with Adam Finberg, writer and director of Star People. I guess I'll start off. So I didn't watch the trailer before watching this. I just knew it was going to be a UFO movie or UFO Hunter sort of thing. And I love movies like this where I go in thinking, oh, I know what this movie's going to be. And they start watching it going, oh, this is not at all the movie I thought it was going to be. This is something completely different. What was your thoughts going into this?
Right, you mean the writing of it? You mean like developing the
Yeah.
story?
Yeah, because it was definitely a lot more than just UFO hunters. This was,
Sure.
you definitely had I don't know how much they give away about it, but definitely like immigration and addiction and how that kind of coalesces into a similar thing.
Sure. I grew up in the Phoenix area, and when the Phoenix Lights, and I was in high school, and I remember hearing all about that and had friends that had witnessed it. And it had always been a really interesting kind of jumping off place to tell a story for me. And I also kind of a space nerd. I love reading about discoveries. I grew up in the era of Carl Sagan and the Voyager spacecraft, and we were just starting to discover what our local universe really looked like. But the characters for me were came out of my work on The Business of Recovery, which was a documentary I directed about 10 years ago it's kind of about the business of treating addiction. And through that, I met a lot of individuals who were experiencing substance abuse issues, who had untreated traumas. And I met a lot of experts in the field of addiction and the psychology of change. And that always stayed with me. Some of the people I met, unfortunately, had died during the filming from substance abuse or alcohol related issues. Others passed years later after we finished the film. And had always been haunted by that when I started developing this story, those kind of elements came into play, I guess, as a writer. And then also having grown up in Arizona, stories of immigration and migrants had always been it's something that you would always, as a kid, I remember reading about. I mean, people were constantly dying in the desert. It's something that has never stopped, even if you don't read about it every day. And it wasn't like this film, I didn't write it yesterday. I wrote this a few years back. So some people may watch this film and think I just wrote this in response to current events, but it was not in any particular, for any one particular event. It's just something that developed as I was figuring out the story.
Yeah, I like how was it Taylor obviously has the drug addiction. That's pretty clear at the start, but what isn't so clear is Claire also has addiction tendencies with chasing the aliens. It on the surface it seems, oh, this is something that she does, and then you can just kind of let it go. Whereas like someone with a drug addiction, it's like, oh, you have to stop this. Like, you recognize it right away. It's fun seeing the sort of dichotomy of those two.
Yeah, I found their characters as a brother and sister were two sides of the same coin. They both had experienced the same trauma as children, and the way they processed it was different for each of them.
Yeah. What was so you've done documentaries and now you're doing a narrative feature. What's kind of some similarities and differences between the two?
It's interesting. I would say my career hasn't been just any one thing or another. I had done music video work and short films. Went to the American Film Institute's directing program where I always had wanted to direct a narrative feature, and it just, for a variety of reasons, I never was not able to get it made until now, or a film made until now. As a documentarian on that side, when I was in that mode, I think there's differences in just that you're working with people, you're working with real people, whether it's an actor or someone that's a subject. But the difference here is that with the subject, you really have to let them take you on their journey to discover and allow people to trust you as a documentarian. But it's also similar in some ways to working with actors, because you have to build trust with people that you're working with in front of the camera, because you are trying to create real moments. So there are certain similarities and obviously differences in that you have a game plan of a script that you're going into the feature, but they're both, I guess as a filmmaker, it's been great to being able to do both, a little bit of both things. I also did a documentary some years ago on Hurricane Katrina. That was the first time I'd ever done a doc. I went out there and had met a lot of people in the aftermath of the storm, and that was my first sort of experience capturing something like that where you're dealing with trauma in front of the camera.
Yeah. And also, like I mentioned earlier, like this was not the movie I expected going in. And I loved it for that. But what's your kind of thoughts on marketing a movie like this? Because you want to market it as a UFO hunter because that's what's going to bring people in. But it'd be harder to market it on the more dramatic side, which I think this leans into.
Gosh, for marketing, I'm not really a marketing guru, but I think that it's okay to be surprised by a story, because that's one of the joys of watching a movie is not knowing exactly where it's going to go. I think it's obviously has elements of people who like stories about the unknown, and it hopefully pleasantly surprises anyone who watches it, I think.
I certainly hope so. It surprised me. I guess we'll end with this. I just want to get a movie recommendation from you. This would be a movie that's either personal to you or a movie that's like, this is real good and no one ever talks about it.
Sure. Movie that I've always loved that I feel like a lot of people don't even know about or maybe have forgotten about is a brilliant film called Brazil by Terry Gilliam. And it was made in the early 80s. And I can't remember when I probably first watched that at some point in the 90s, because I was way too young in the 80s to watch that movie. But there are a lot of interesting things in that movie that are, I think, are very relevant to today about a dystopian society and being related in this sort of bureaucratic world that the main character's in. But it's a great film if anyone that hasn't watched it.
I've seen Brazil. I've never watched like all the different cuts on it. I know the Criterion has like the box set with. Have you seen all the cuts on that, or do you have a preferred one?
Oh gosh, no, I don't know if I've which one I've seen. Well, I do know that there was a released version that had a happy ending to it. That is not the intention of the film. The film has a sort of horrible ending in a way. If you've seen the original ending,
Yeah.
I'm assuming. And there was a version which I never did see that had some sort of happy ending that didn't make any sense. That the studios at the time were afraid of this idea of a film that doesn't have sort of a hopeful ending to it, which is unusual for sure. A lot of films tend to want to veer towards some sort of hope at the end, but this one did not, and that was the one I think I like thought made the most sense for what the story was trying to convey.
Nice. Star People comes out in theaters on July 25th, this Friday, and on VOD August 12th. Don't wait for that. Just go to the theaters. But yeah, congratulations. This is a really cool movie and really enjoyed it a lot. And yeah, congratulations again.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you.